Welcome to another episode of the Impossible Life Podcast. I'm your co-host, Nick Surface, and I'm looking across at a man who tied his mother's tubes before leaving the birth canal. That's right, friends, the former Navy SEAL, Garrett Unkelbach, a man who knew his parents couldn't do any better after he was born.
You know, there's a part of, I always wanted a little brother, but I guess there's a different part of me when I was young. This is actually a true story.
Okay.
My parents, I think they wanted more children, but apparently when I was born, I made sure that wasn't the case.
And we don't know exactly. I didn't get the details on how, but when I first heard that story, I was like, man, this is a dude. He knew what he was doing, man. He's like MacGyvered his way out of there.
There will be no one else.
Yeah, you're basically Highlander, man. Like, there could be only one.
I will be the only son.
Yeah, exactly. Britt was like, Britt came before you, and then it was like, yeah, you guys are done now. I'm going to take care of that. Anyways, that amused me greatly, probably more so than anybody else listening to this, which is a little self-indulgent, so forgive me there. Before we get into today's episode, though, I want to share with everybody publicly about our 2024 New Year's Day Ice Bath Firestarter event.
Before we get into this, I'm just going to tell you now, don't skip ahead to the episode, right? This is Nick and I talking to you, and this means that we're here to help you.
Right.
We want you to participate in this event, so let us tell you about it.
Yeah. I will say, for anybody that attended last year, and we had 55 people attended, there is literally no better way to start your 2024 than by doing this. We basically get everybody together at 6:30 in the morning in a
This is an event coming up January 1st, 2024. We're going to put you in an uncomfortable circumstance, and you're going to pay to be there.
Exactly. But what we're also going to do is we're going to stretch your thinking and give you absolute rocket fuel to propel you into 2024. Just the thought of being with that many like-minded people, all doing something difficult and making a declaration that this is going to be the best year of their life is powerful. I mean, look, this thing is not expensive. Right now, we're doing 10% off until the end of the month.
We didn't talk about this, Nick, but I want to do a special.
Okay.
I want to do a special just for the people that are listening. We have so many people, and those of you who are hearing this on Monday, the day that we release the episode, I want to do something for you specifically.
Okay.
Right. And so this won't be for everybody, but it'll be for those of you who listen to this on Monday. I want to offer an additional 10% off for their Firestarter tickets.
Okay.
For those of you who hear the type of, you're our people, right? An episode comes out and we want to listen to it. And you know what you got to do? You got to take action today. So we're going to give you an extra 10% off discount coupon Monday only.
Okay.
Right. And if you hear this on Monday and you purchase your ticket on Monday, you're going to get an additional 10% off. Coupon code Monday only.
Okay. That's the coupon name. Is you enter Monday only at checkout, and it'll get you an extra 10%
Doesn't work
off,
on Tuesday.
which means that it's going to get you 20% off. So if you hear this today on Monday, go do it now. Here's the thing. The baseline ticket is $30 anyways. So that means that it would put it down to $24, which is just ridiculously cheap.
If you attended this with us last year, and we had about 55 people last year, and we're expecting way more people to be there this year, really what we're doing is covering our costs, because the ticket price has gone up a few dollars from last year, and we're adding so much to this.
Correct.
We're going to have a photographer there. We're going to have some other special things there for you. This is going to be an incredible event. What you're going to do is you're going to come out, you're going to get in the cold water with us, right? You're going to experience the ice bath that some of you have not jumped into yet. But even if you own an ice bath, you want to be at this event, because just like when we do push-ups in our men's group, there's something different about doing it with the group. And when we do all this together, it's something very powerful. And there's an exercise that we do with you beforehand to give you an incredible takeaway that you're going to get after the ice bath. And for those of you who really want to jump in deep with us, you'll see it on the website. We have a few spots left, but we've sold to our Mindset Mastery group before we've released this to the public, and within a week we've already sold 9 of our 25 spots. We have an all-day intensive. Why don't you tell them about it?
Yeah, it's the Firestarter Fast Track. And just to say, if you're looking for the base ticket, we always do things in pairs, because we like people to bring somebody with them and go do something difficult together. So we actually have discounts for pairs. We also have a package where you get a hoodie or a hat. I'd highly recommend the hoodie, not just because they're sweet. The hats are sweet as well, but because it's going to be freaking cold.
We don't do cheap merch.
No, we don't. They're going to be awesome, but it's going to be cold. I promise you, the lake will probably be somewhere in the lower 40s. But I don't know what the weather will be like. It's Dallas. I mean, honestly, Garrett and I had tested this thing out when it was 28 degrees. I can tell you that's a different degree of difficulty, but also a different degree of joy when you're done. Now, the Firestarter Fast Track, and as Garrett said, as of time of recording, we had only 16. There may be even less of these at this point. What that is, that's an all-day event with us. And this is where we're going to go way deeper. One thing you will hear is that Garrett's going to stretch your thinking. Whatever you think is possible for you in 2024, I promise you that it's more than what you think. And when you have somebody like Garrett there and myself to help stretch your thinking, we're going to help you establish a vision for the year. We're then going to help you clarify and get very detailed on your goals. We're going to then also give you all the implementation and execution. We're going to show you how to check in on these things, how to put them into action and we're going to schedule them with you. So you're going to walk out of there with so much confidence and ready to attack the year, because it's not that you're just going to be hoping these things come to play. You're going to have the strategy and the plan to do it. And you're going to have, and I'm not talking about like hypotheticals. I'm talking about like in your calendar, here's what you do, here's when you do it, here's how you do it. And there's also a couple surprises that are going to be a little bit of bonus should you need some additional motivation throughout the year. And I
enjoy the podcast, but I love in-person events. You will get the best of me. And I always, for every in-person event I do, I always add in a little extra value. So
yeah, we got
I won't tell you about that, but we'll save it for you.
Yeah, and you get lunch. And if you know anything about my man Garrett, there's no such, the dude doesn't eat cheap food. I'll just put it that way. So you're going to eat well. It's going to be indoors. So what you would do, in case you're wondering, you'd come to the ice bath event with everybody. And then myself, Garrett, and these 25 people are going to go away. You get a hoodie and a hat as part of this. You get a customized towel. You get a picture that we're going to have from the professional photographer there of both yourself and the group. I mean, there's a bunch of things that are going on. But this really what it is, if you want to say, I'm guaranteeing that 2024 is going to be the best year of my life, come do this. Invest in yourself. We're going to give you the game plan, and you will come out of there ready to attack.
We're going to deliver about 10 times what you see the value of on the website. Yeah. So if you want to see all of these, if you want to purchase, how do they do it, Nick?
Yeah, go to theimpossible.life /shop, and you will see the Firestarter event tickets on there. We're also going to link to it in the show notes, but you'll see it there on the website.
And that Monday only coupon will apply to everything on the store. So I hope you take advantage of it.
All right, let's get on with the episode, G. Right, today's episode, I feel like it needs to come with a disclaimer. And here's the disclaimer. If you take this on board and you are willing to receive instruction, like it talks so often about in Proverbs, this one can truly level you up incredibly. If you choose to get offended or be like, no, that's not, I disagree with that, this one will also hurt you quite a bit. The reason is, today we're talking about weakness. And specifically, we are going to give you a whole new lens, shall we say, to define weakness and see where it applies in your own life.
You know, something I've noticed, because I've pointed out weakness to a lot of people. I've had it pointed out to me too.
Right.
And, you know, I initially had the same reaction until it kept getting pointed out, and I decided that they're going to keep pointing it out, so maybe I'll just change.
Right.
But most people, when you point out their weakness, they're very offended.
Yeah, which is an interesting thought process. They
defend it.
Yeah. And that kind of reinforces why they're weak, doesn't it? Because, I mean, I would hope nobody out there wants to be weak and be like, oh, yeah, I'm okay with being weak. Like, you should not like that. Hopefully that triggers something in you that makes you think, hey, do I need to actually change here? So as we go through these, all I would ask is just, hey, to quote your dad, we don't have a sound effect for him, but if the shoe fits, wear it, right?
That's right.
Like, truly look at yourself. So let's talk about weakness, G. The weakest thing that I could think to look up for statistically, and this comes from census.gov. In the year 2015, according to the census.gov, the child support payments, of all the child support payments that were due, only 43.5% actually paid the full amount due for their kids, which means there's almost 57% of men, I'll say, or women, it's probably largely men, even thought that they could take care of the child that they were willing to help play a part and bring to this world. That, to me, is like the ultimate weakness right there. You can't even support your kid.
You had to stand before a judge and him appoint you your financial responsibility of the child, and you still can't meet it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a shocker. And
I would tell you, anybody who's hearing this, there's probably not very many, but if you're hearing this and not paying your payments, your reaction is probably similar to how other people would feel when you point out their weakness, and they're going to tell you all the reasons that you're wrong, all the reasons that you don't understand my point, you don't understand the reasons that I have.
Mm-hmm. Well, here's an idea: that kid doesn't get to have that same reason, right? Like, oh, that's okay, I'll just skip food today because you're having tough times. That's a shocker to me, man. I can't even understand that one. Anyways, before I go way down that rabbit hole and make everybody feel terrible, let's go ahead and move on.
That's not the point of this.
It's not the point of this.
The point of this, different than what my experience in the military was, which oftentimes the point of pointing out your weakness was just to shame you. Really, the only reason that they shamed you is so that you would be more encouraged to change. The point of pointing out weakness here isn't to shame anybody. The point of pointing out weakness is so that you can eliminate it.
Yeah. And we've talked about my weakness on this podcast. I feel a little bit more than I'd even like to, specifically around ice baths and things like that. But you more than anybody have highlighted weakness to me.
You've always had the right response to it, though.
I appreciate that. And that's, I mean, and I hope I always do, because truly I want to grow and get better. So if I realize I'm being weak, like, I want to get stronger. That's what I want to do. Well, you introduced a term to me that I'd never heard before, and you still throw it around at me, mostly as a joke these days. Garrett will just look at me sometimes and go, weak genes. And I'm like, whatever, man.
Well, okay, so a good example of weak genes is like, say we all go on like the same trip, and then one of us comes back sick and everyone else is healthy. It's like, oh, must be weak genes, right? We were all exposed to the same environment, but it affected you differently than it affected us.
Right.
Where I learned that term is very popular in SEAL training and very popular in the SEAL teams. Going through SEAL training, we all do the same things. We do the same runs. We do the same swims. We pick up the same boats. We pick up the same logs. It's like we all did the same things. Why did your leg break and mine didn't? Why did your whatever break and mine didn't? Right? And so guys will say to that person, must be weak genes.
Yeah.
Right? Like we were all exposed to the, and people think, man, that's so rude.
Yeah.
Right? That's so.
It was unfair. Yeah.
That's mean.
It's just bad luck.
Well, it's a lot of times it's not just genetics. There are genetic factors to it, and that's really not like you can't really change your genetic factors. But what guys were just quick to point out, it's not about like, oh, you don't have as good a genetics as me. Like there's no supremacy of genetics. 'Cause I would tell you there's some guys in the SEAL teams that do not come from an elite class of genetics, right? Like I met plenty of specimens, like genetic specimens in the military, and they didn't make it, right? So it's not about weak genes. What it's pointing out is, well, how did we all do the same things, but you couldn't do it? Right. How come everybody else can make their child support payments, but you can't? How can, or what you hear all the time is like similar to the weak genes mindset is you're able to say like, oh, well, nobody told me. Right, like in BUDS and SEAL training, it's like all of us will show up on time, like be where we were told to be, and one person will be late.
Right.
And it's like, what's your excuse, really? Like 127 of us showed up on time and you didn't. We are all in the same training program. We sleep in the same barracks. We're all issued the same gear. Like it is equal for all of us. We all have the exact same responsibilities, doing the same things. Why couldn't you be here when everyone else was?
Yeah.
Right. Oh, what are you going to say? You didn't hear it? Because 127 people will testify against you that they heard it.
Yeah, and that can be a tough pill to swallow. But if you have a different perspective, it can also be slightly encouraging. Because to your point, well, if all these other people could do it, then guess what? They're human, just like me. Then I can figure it out as well.
That was my mindset to make it through training.
Right.
Hey, people have done it before. It must be possible, so I can do it too.
Yeah. Now, we looked up the definition of weakness in our beloved Webster's 1828 dictionary, and we were not surprised at all by what it said. It just said you're lacking strength. Like, literally, there was about 12 different definitions. Every single one started with not. It was like not having this, not able to withstand weight, not able to have strength of mind.
Because the reason weakness is all of the knots is because weakness is not who you're supposed to be.
Exactly.
Right? Weakness is lack.
Yes, that's how we ultimately got to is lack. Now, like I said to you, who you hang around with is so important, and that's where I'm grateful for you, man, because you really have helped me level up so much of what I see. Sometimes in very amusing fashion.
Still haven't helped you level up your navigation abilities. That may be the last one.
You know what, man? Maybe one day we'll get there. Like, truthfully, maybe we will. Right now, I'm still a little bit checked out on that one. You're going to get me distracted. Garrett gives me...
At least you never question my navigation.
No, man. You want to tell that story? Yeah, no, I don't question your navigation. So funny story, actually. Real quick, because I think the audience will enjoy this one. So Garrett, when we went up the mountain, had one moment where he was a little bit out of it.
I enjoyed everyone else like having a pretty tough time, because some of these guys I train with, some of these guys I run with, and I'm just not a great runner. Basically, if you train in running, you're going to be a better runner than me.
Right.
The only reason if Garrett's a better runner than you is because you don't train it.
Right. And Garrett and I run a lot, so I think that was directed largely at me.
and so most of these guys were hurting pretty bad from the altitude. I've done plenty of climbing. I actually like climbing. I'm really good at like just climbing in general, and altitude doesn't bother me too much. And so all these guys are just hurting. The first day we're there, we talked about it a little bit before. First day we're there, they're hungover, all of that, and it wasn't affecting me at all.
Not actually hungover. That's just how it felt.
Right.
Yeah.
And all for all, and these guys got all these clothes on and stuff. I'm wearing a long sleeve shirt and my windbreaker, all the way up this climb with wind and snow. And I didn't feel the altitude at all until we turned around and started coming back down.
He had one moment. He had one moment where I looked at him, because I've done a lot of stuff with you, and I looked at you and I was like, oh, dude, you're not doing as good as you normally are. And so he had a headache, and he's like, man, my legs feel like Jello. You popped a couple tablets, pain pills or whatever. We got back down the mountain. Everything was fine. You still led us. You're sitting there navigating us the whole time. We're all following you. So we're in the car, and I'm like, dude, you felt it too. And I'm like trying to convince Garrett that he was about his moment of weakness. And he just goes, please, if I can drop bombs with a migraine, I can navigate a bunch of yahoos down a mountain with a little bit of a headache. And I was like, I mean, what do you say to that? That's actually true. You did have a migraine once on a mission, and you had to just suck it up and call in the ordnance.
Because they were talking about like, man, like, it's really crazy how you like still navigated us with your head hurting. And I'm like, navigated you with a GPS down like a government trail.
With no one shooting at us. Like, it was pretty easy. Yeah. And that's what I mean. So who you hang around with will change your level set. And that was an amusing version of it. Well, another place where I've encountered this. So Garrett's used the term weak in a lot of areas where I'm like, well, no, that's not weakness, dude. That's just, that's bad luck, or, that's understandable why that happened to that guy. Like somebody getting hurt in buds. Dude, that's not weakness. That's just bad luck, man. Like they landed wrong. The sand was turned slightly. Well, 40 other guys jumped there before him and didn't do it. And so you define that as weak. Well, that you may think, well, that's harsh. That's a Navy SEAL thing. Well, here's another place where Garrett's defined weak a number of different ways for me. One, he says the hallmark of being weak is the words, I had no choice.
The 4 words that tell me you're weak. Anytime I hear a man say, I had no choice, means you're weak. Means you've already said, like, I can't control. I'm not capable of anything. Like, the only thing that I can do is the easy path. The only thing that I can do is the path that doesn't require any effort, require me to grow, or require me to take on more responsibility. Like, I had no choices. The only thing I could do, right? Literally, you're saying I'm weak when you say that.
Yeah, and what's the alternative to that? It's very empowering. You always have a choice. Yeah. And we know the Viktor Frankl quote because we love it, right? Like, everything can be taken from man except for the last of human freedoms, which is to choose one thoughts in any given circumstance.
For most of the time, and there can be really difficult circumstances in life, but most of the time when people are saying, I had no choice, it's what they're saying is that my flesh did a really good job of convincing me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly right. And so you're kind of like, okay, that might be a different definition for you. This is also a man who one time when a snake almost bit his friend, instead of being like, man, that was a close one, his literal words to me were like, you try and kill my friend, I kill you. And chased this snake off into the forest, which if you heard my stories about snakes growing, that was on the Mindset Mastery. We shared that I had an unhealthy fear of snakes due to something that my mom, unwittingly sewed into us as a kid. And then I'm talking to this guy who's like, yeah, this snake tried to kill my friend, so I just went after it. And then I find out that you've killed hundreds of snakes growing up. Okay, like that's a little bit different.
Well, and also when I was very young, I was 7 or 8, I had a scary encounter with a rattlesnake, and like rattlesnakes used to bother me when I was little. And we did a lot of hunting in West Texas, lots of rattlesnakes there. Had a scary encounter with a rattlesnake, but I had to grow out of that and not just stop being afraid. I went the other way.
Right.
And I said, like, I've caught and killed hundreds of rattlesnakes at this point, and I've picked plenty up with my bare hands.
Yeah. But that, okay, so you may think, oh, well, that's just a crazy Garrett thing. What I like, and I'm explaining these things to you because I hope you can, like Garrett said, I've had a good response to him telling me where I'm weak. And so I'm not saying that to be funny. I'm saying this because I'm hoping everybody else can highlight some of these things. What I've observed in you don't do defense. Like, there's no hunker down and just take it. It's like if somebody comes at you, they better be prepared for a massive reaction back. What a great mindset to have, that like, no, I'm the aggressor. I'm on offense. I'm going to take charge of this. Now, you could immediately say, well, that's because he has all this training. Well, guess what? There's lots of training available for you too. So if you don't feel like you're capable of that, go make it happen.
Also, go listen to our aggression podcast.
Agreed, man. It's underrated. Our man Carlos Frank, who's on Mindset Master at the shout out to Carlos, great dude. Bought a whoop actually after our to congratulate himself for 75 hard. So good job, Carlos. I know you're listening. He actually said he listened to that podcast every day as part of 75 hard. Which I love that because I think it's an underrated episode. Anyways, people are probably like, yeah, stop talking about your podcast. But and then the other one. So rehabbing his knee. We've talked about this a little bit on this podcast, but you had a doctor tell you were never going to run again because your knee was so jacked up.
A combination between my knee and my back. Had multiple doctors be like, yeah, this is, you're going to struggle for a long time with this, especially with my back injury, because that's the lower spine. It's not one if you operate on it, really just like makes it worse, but makes your pain go away. And I actually think, like, literally, I thanked the doctor when he told me that, because I said, thank you. Those are the words I needed to hear, because currently in my life, I'm batting 1,000 at when people have told me you can't recover from this or you can't do this.
Yeah.
Right. Like, that was all I needed to hear, is that, because what he's telling me is like, that's all your other patients, right? This is how everyone else has handled it, but I can handle it differently. I worked with this guy in the military, who was, he was just like our stretch doctor. He wasn't really he wasn't a doctor, but he was just the stretch doc. Yeah. And he had been a decathlete in his life and had just about every injury, from like dislocations to ruptured discs, like torn ligaments and stuff. 0 surgeries. Yeah. He had 0 surgeries in his life. He's like, I can recover from anything. It was the mindset that he had.
Exactly.
It's like, there is a way to overcome this.
Now, do you mind, I don't know if you mind me saying this, but did you go out and find stem cells? Is that how you actually ended up rehabbing yourself?
Yeah, that was one of the things I did. Because I was just like, hey, look, I know it was been my mindset for all the difficult things I've done in my life. When people tell me that you can't, all that you're telling me is that you don't know how. Right. But I believe, even if no one knows how, that there must be a way. And I was like, man, this ain't even a big deal. Right. This is just an injury. Yeah. Right. It's not like I'm missing an arm and I have to figure out how to regrow an arm. Right. I'm just like, I just need to heal from an injury. What do I have to do? Yeah. And so, like, for example, I had like 0 millimeters on one of the discs in my spine. And they're like, those don't really grow back. I'm like, well, we'll see. Yeah. Right. I came back a year later, like, man, we've never seen this before. Right. I'm like, because I started reading the papers. I started looking at stuff because I believe there is a way to heal. And that's not really the point of like just healing your own body. But the point is like just looking at the difficulties in your life. And instead of where people assign to you, right? Like, you can get assigned an identity, you get assigned a weakness from your doctor, right? This is some of the encouragement I've given to other people who've had injuries and stuff like that. Are you just going to accept that? Or are you going to say, you know what, maybe there's a different way. Maybe it's possible. And that's my encouragement to anybody. Like, when you're facing an impossible task, you've got to change it from impossible to possible before you can make it a reality. Yeah. That's really the truth. And most people just leave it in the impossible category and it'll always stay there.
But people wouldn't say that that's weak to just take the doctor's thing. But for you were like, no.
Well, I had perspective, right? I had friends who had gotten way worse injuries than me, whether it's getting shot multiple times. Like, there's a guy that I know shot 7 or 8 times. Dude's still stronger than me. Right. Like, he was stronger than me before, and within a year after getting shot that many times, he is stronger than me again. He's like, I'm not going to let this be a weakness. I've seen other guys get blown up, right? And they have an injury. They just say, I'm not going to let this be a weakness because they were assigned weakness. Yes. And they said, but I'm not going to let it be that way.
Yeah, I love that, man. And that's what I'm hoping that people capture, is just that thought process. You said it to your own dad when he was laid up and just in the worst pain of his life and miserable. You said, I know dudes that are strong.
Regretting being alive. He was in so much pain. I was like, is this your life? Yeah. Is this how you're going to let it be? Yeah. Right. You're going to have to start making some changes, or just keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah. And then the other place wherever I've seen you challenge, and I could go through a bunch of these, but I just want to give you some common ones that I think a lot of people would go, well, that's not weakness. And you're saying, hey, you can let it be, or you cannot. The other one is in leading your wife. We've had multiple conversations where it's like, well, you know, my wife's not doing this. This isn't me, but we're just talking. Garrett and I talk about a lot of stuff, and we'll talk about this, about hypothetical situations or things that we see. And Garrett's response is like, well, why wouldn't your wife follow you?
Yeah, whether it's people from the podcast or people reach out to me or men that I coach, and they're talking about, you know, how do I get my wife to do that? How do I get my wife to do X? And my response to them is, why wouldn't your wife listen to everything that you say? Yeah. Right? And I put it doesn't matter, because sometimes we, like all of us, like sometimes men will tell me, like, this is the actual weakness that their wives have. And it sounds accurate, right? What they're saying. But I don't say like, oh, here's how you fix your wife's weakness, right? What I say to them is, why wouldn't your wife listen to everything that you say? What reason have you given her to discredit you? Right. And that's that, which actually to me goes back to Ephesians 5 leadership, which is the way that God tells men to lead their wives. The Bible says women should submit to their husband, right? And that's hard for women. But what it puts on men is that you should love your wives the way Christ loved the church. And the way that Christ loved the church is like, God tried over and over, like, hey, let me give you laws. Let me give you leadership. Let me give you judges. Let me give you kings. Let me give you all these things to try and make it work for you. It's still not working for you. You keep screwing it up. God didn't screw it up. Man keeps screwing it up. And he says, you know what it's going to take? Because what you deserve is death. But what you need is redemption.
Yes.
So I'm going to send my son to die for you so that he can cover your sins and we can have a path back to relationship. He didn't say, what do you need to do? He said, what can I do to help you? And this is the way that men are called to lead their wives. This way that men are called to lead in general. Not what do other people need to fix? That's the question men are asking me.
Yeah.
Like, how do I get my wife? Like, that question is, what do I need to tell her so she'll change?
Right.
And I said, how do you need to change so she'll always follow you?
Yeah. Yeah, and that is a whole nother level. So I think that'll probably open a few people's eyes. Now, I want to get into 4 ways to be weak, but actually there was something you said, and we didn't plan this, G, so just go with me here. You talked about how in 2 Timothy 1:7, which God has not given you a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind, that it was very much in order.
God's
for a
intentional.
reason.
He doesn't do anything unintentional.
Yeah.
Right? Because the love is the most important thing that we're supposed to do. And like the greatest commandment is love God and love your neighbor. Right? But God didn't give us a weak love. And in that scripture, like what that's about, and it's Paul writing to Timothy, I understand that. But that scripture is for us, right? What is the spirit that you have? A spirit of power,
right.
A spirit of love, and a spirit of a sound mind. Within you is this way that God made you. And how did God make you? Right? God made you in an image of himself. Mm-hmm. You know what God is? God is powerful. Mm-hmm. God is great, and he made you like him. And then with that foundation of power, right? It's not a foundation of weakness. It's not a foundation of lack. With that foundation of power, here's what you're called to do: to love,
yes,
right? To create, to build, to serve others, right? With power, from the power that I've given you. And so like that scripture to me is also a reminder, not just of like that we have a spirit of love and self-control, but that God made us this way. God made us great, yes, and God made us powerful, right? And when you're not acting that way, you're not acting the way that God made you,
yes,
right? But just like in that scripture, it says, I didn't give you a spirit of fear, which means if you're feeling fear, it's not from God.
Yeah. And the reason I want to say that, man, is because we're talking about weakness. This can sting, or you can just realize that when you're acting like this, you're not being who God made you to be, because like you just said, God made us to be powerful. And so that's a whole nother highlight of like, oh, okay, I want to be in line with God's order, because when you're in line with God's order, guess what? God's ways happen.
There's a mindset that I have on the way that I just want to live my life. And a lot of people look at themselves and they look at life and they say, what's acceptable for me?
Yeah.
Right?
Big time.
But I look at myself, I look at humanity, I look at what it means to be a man, and I say, what am I actually capable of?
Yes.
Not what's acceptable,
yep,
but what am I capable
yes,
of? And what's funny is when you accomplish something and you increase your limits of what you're capable of, now you see a new potential boundary.
Exactly.
It's like, man, I used to think this was as far as I could go, and I did it.
Yeah.
I wonder how much further I could go.
Yeah.
Right. And it's this perpetual living towards increasing the boundary of strength, increasing the boundary of everything that you're capable of. Or you can say, well, what's acceptable?
Yep.
Right. And you'll go the other way. You'll say, well, if falling back to this level of weakness is acceptable, maybe I could fall back to the next level of weakness. Would that be acceptable?
Yeah.
Right. You're either growing or you're dying. You're either becoming stronger or you're becoming weaker. And that all hinges around the standards that you set for yourself.
Yeah. And you know what? Most people's standards are just a little bit better than what they're surrounded by. Yep. So, I mean, you talked about how you had some guys who were lid lifters for you because you saw what they did in the military. For somebody who's living just surrounded by the average person whose great idea of a day is like, I can crush a six-pack and sit on my butt all day and watch football. Like, all you got to do is just be a little bit better than that guy, and you'll feel good about yourself.
Yeah. I was blessed with perspective.
Yeah.
I saw guys who'd been shot 7 times say, I'm not going to let this be a weakness.
Right.
So when I got some crushed discs in my back, I'm like, whatever.
Yeah. Hey, and guess what, everybody? You're listening to this, so you just got a perspective shift as well.
That's right.
What you talked about with that, about the changing questions, to me, is when you see somebody's motivation change from pain, which is, pain will get you going. It won't keep you going, right? And so you will say, what do I have to do to make this go away? And you'll get far enough away from the pain. And then, if you're not, you can just start drifting back until it gets hurting again, and then you do the same thing, or you drift towards a different pain. That's how a lot of people live their lives. But the question you asked, when you say, what am I capable of? That's an open-ended question, because what do I have to do? Or you said, what's acceptable? That's like 1, 2, 3. Great. I did 1, 2, 3. Done. No, you're never done. You're still alive. Yeah. Whereas what am I capable of? That's a never-ending vision question that will keep pulling you forward.
What's acceptable versus what you're capable of is the same thing as survival versus thriving. Yes. When you're running from pain, you're surviving. Yes. When you're running towards purpose, when you're running towards possibility and potential, when you're running towards greatness, that's when you're thriving. Yes. Right? And that's when you'll always just keep running. Mm-hmm. You'll just keep running. Oh, man, climbed a mountain, more mountains. Let's see what else I can do. Or you're running from pain and you're just getting weaker and weaker and weaker until you die.
Yeah, and it's so exciting. I can say that I feel like I'm experiencing this. So much of what I thought things were going to be when I got past a certain level, it's way better. And I'm enjoying it.
I was joking with one of my best friends, Pastor Josh, the other day, and we were joking about, like, some people have jumped for the last time. They don't even know it. Yeah. Like, literally, like, they've left the earth for the last time. Like, some people don't really work out. Some people get older and, like, they quit jumping. Like, when's the last time you jumped? And within that thought, I would say to people who are struggling with weakness, when's the last day that you stop getting stronger? Right? Yeah. I hope until I die in some form or fashion, I'm getting stronger.
Yes, I'm so with you on that, man. I say all the time, like, the best day of my life will be the day that I die. Not like that sounds weird, but I truly mean I'm going to be the best I've ever been my last day on this earth, because it's just constant, never-ending improvement, which can either sound tiring, or in my honestly, the way I look at it, that's just real life. You're either going to grow better or grow worse, so you might as well choose to grow better, right? Because it's a process no matter what. All right, let's get into your 4 ways to be weak, G, because I think you have a lot of. I think this is very helpful, and it'll highlight a lot of things for people.
There's 4 ways to be weak, because there's really 4 ways that you need to be strong. You need to be strong in all of these ways. And I would say they build on each other. You need to be strong in all of these ways, because this is what really makes you a well-rounded man. Yeah. You can have some of these strengths and some of these weaknesses, and you're partially strong as a man, but you want to be well-rounded. I mean, think about the 4 walls of a house. You don't want a house with 3 walls. Right. You definitely don't want a house with 2 walls. Right? You want a house with 4 walls. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to talk about 4 ways to be weak, and we'll also mention the ways that you need to be strong.
Yeah, and one of the things we should say, the way that weakness gets into you is through reason and logic, right? Mm-hmm. It doesn't show up and go like, hey, I'm weakness. It shows up. It's always like, well, no, that makes sense. It's like what we said, well, that's not really fair, right? It's not really fair that
There's always a disguise.
Yeah, it's deceptive.
Right? Like you when you go through the line at McDonald's, it doesn't, like, number 1 isn't get fat, number 2 isn't get fat faster. Right?
Right, yeah.
Right? No, it's advertised to you. It's deceptive in the ways that, like, here's the things you would like about it, not the things that you wouldn't like about it.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a good point. All right, G, what's way number 1?
Number 1 way to be weak is be passive. Yeah. Right? What does it mean to be passive? Well, it's the opposite of being bold, right? If you are not passive, you are bold and courageous, like what man is created to be. You're supposed to be unafraid of things in this world, right? When you're surviving, you're running away from all the things, like, oh man, I just don't want to encounter that. Don't want to encounter that. How do I hide from this pain? Like, to be passive is to be non-confrontational. Mm-hmm. You need to be the thing that you need to be most confrontational with is yourself. Yeah, agreed. Anytime you sense weakness, anytime you sense a part of you that should not be there, you need to be violent with it. A lot of people are passive with dark thoughts. A lot of people are passive with depressive thoughts. A lot of people are passive with sin in their life. Like, they just allow it to linger. When these things come into your life, like, you should be on your feet with your sword, right? That's what it means to be bold. That's what it means to be courageous. A lot of people talk about this, and we'll just mention it. The first sin of man is passivity, right? If you read the story in the Garden of Eden, God tells Adam, don't eat of this tree. Then God makes Eve. Before Eve had ever been made, God told Adam, don't eat of this tree, right? Keep the garden, take care of it. I made it for you. Then God creates Eve. And it says when Eve, people are like, oh yeah, well, woman sinned first. It's not really that way, because Eve is standing there listening to the serpent, eats of the fruit. And then it says that she turned and gave some to Adam. Adam was standing right there, right? He just allowed it to happen. God gave the orders to Adam. It was Adam's job to say, no, Eve, like God said, we are not supposed to do this. God didn't say it to Eve. He said it to Adam. Don't eat of this tree. And then Adam's just standing there being passive, allowing it to happen. There's a king, and just because I love these 2 stories, there's a king in the Bible. His name is King Ahab. He had a wife named Jezebel who was, persecuting God's people. Yeah. And what it says about, it's in, I think, 1 Kings 16, what it says about Ahab, it says that Ahab angered the Lord more than any other king before him. And like if you read about Ahab was just passive. He didn't really do anything wrong, but he didn't do anything right either. He just sat back and allowed it to happen. And so as a man, like, I'm not saying like just go around swinging your sword at everything.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? Like, cause a lot, like no one, that's what people would call, air quotes, toxic masculinity, just the rampage man. Yeah. Like you're just as out of control.
For sure.
You don't know what's right and you're just killing everything instead of killing nothing.
Yeah.
Right? You need to kill what's killing you. You need to kill what's killing your family. You need to kill the things that are again, and I'm not just talking about like in a literal sense of being violent, but you need to be violent spiritually. You need to be violent mentally and emotionally with the things that are trying to kill you. Yeah. Right? The things that want to rob you of your purpose, the things that want to rob you of joy, remove them. Don't just say like, oh, well, like that. To me, the way that a lot of people are passive is they would see a lion walking through their neighborhood and just go back inside and be like, man, I hope it doesn't come to my house.
Yep.
Or, a lion would walk in their front door and they would just go in their bedroom and say, well, I hope it just doesn't know that I'm here. Right? If there was a lion in my neighborhood, I would never give it the chance to eat me or my children or my neighbors' children. I would kill it. Right? Like I'm going to go out and face the things. I'm not going to hope to not die.
Yeah. And the way that passivity, will get into it, you touched on it but didn't say it in exactly these terms, is it's an avoidance of uncomfortable emotions, right? Like your emotions dictate to you that like, oh, I'm starting to feel, uncomfortable with this. I'm starting to feel a little bit of fear. I'm starting to feel a little bit of pain. And you allow those things to dictate to you. And it means like, oh, I'm not going to go there. So what are you really seeking? You're seeking comfort. Like if your best day is when it's easy and everything just goes right, and that's really what you want, like you can't wait to retire. If I could retire at 45, man, what a life that would be. Man, you are passive. I promise you're passive because your number one goal and the thing that is most ideal for you is comfort, and that will kill you. So that's how it sneaks in. Like we said, reason and logic. Well, of course you want to retire. Who doesn't enjoy that? Hey, there's nothing wrong with that, man. Hey, we're the most civilized time in all of humanity. Like we've evolved, right? So, comfort's good. Enjoy it. That's how it comes to you. And you go, you know what? You're right. I love playing golf, crushing a six-pack, and sitting around watching college football every day. Like, that's really what I want. Great. You're passive.
Let me give quickly the two cures to being passive. So we already talked about one of them, 2 Timothy 1:7, right? It's just understand that God didn't make you that way. And so you've allowed these things and you need to choose to get rid of them in your life. But also, here's the other thing that I've learned. And so, like, I like to look at things and what the Bible says because that's what truth is, right? But you can also observe truth. Yeah. And here's some of the truth that I've observed. But a lot of this I observed in the military is the power of intrusive accountability, right? Like, there's a level of, and you can hear this the wrong way, it's not meant to be, but like, there's a level of nakedness in the military of how guys are with each other. Like, you can't hide from dudes, like on your, especially, in buds, which you actually see each other naked plenty of times, but or in the SEAL teams, right? Because people know who you are, right? And that actually, like, you can't be passive there because you can't hide, right? That to be passive is to hide. Because what did Adam and Eve do after they sinned? They went and hid, right? They didn't want to confront the issues, right? And so what men need in their life is not just accountability. Men need intrusive accountability. You need people who can see every part of you, because men just want to be accountable with the good parts. Here, let me show you all the things I did right, right? What men need is intrusive accountability, where there's nothing in your life that you can hide. And it's a painful feeling, but it's also an empowering feeling. When people have seen everything about you, when they've seen all of the things that you don't want others to see, like when you can just really let it all out there with someone, like these are all the areas that I'm wrong. Then with that truth in your life, that's where you can build and grow and say, I can grow from here. Like the worst thing that I could possibly have imagined is that people would know this about me. But now that I know that I can get better. Yeah.
Oh, that's so good, G. All right, what's number 2?
Number 2, these build, right? Number 2 way to be weak, to be a weak man, deny responsibility, right? Think about all of the things in your life that you've just breezed past and said like, oh, well, that's not my problem. That's not my responsibility. This morning on my run, ran right by a piece of trash, picked it up. Why? Because I want you to applaud for me? No, because I actually care about my neighborhood, and I'm not the type of person, really, like, I don't care about that piece of trash or like really necessarily how clean the sidewalk is. What I care about is the type of person that I am. And I'm the type of person that's not going to step over trash. I'm the type of person that wherever I go, things are going to get better. Men who deny responsibility are the ones who are trying to minimize as much as they're responsible for. Like, I just got to get mine. I just got to do me. I just got to worry about the things for myself. And that's not what men are. Just like men weren't created to be weak, men were not created to be small. You were created, this is in the Bible, you were created to take dominion. You were created to multiply. You were created to subdue things, right? You weren't created to say like, well, if I could just like find a really good tree that was in fruit all year long, I could just build a house up there and live there, and I wouldn't really have to do anything.
Yeah, it's not fair. Yeah.
Like God is a creator, and he made us to be creators.
Yes.
God is constantly advancing the kingdom, and he made us and gave us a role to do that with him, to take dominion, to advance the kingdom. To deny responsibility is really to deny what it means to be a man.
Mm-hmm. And I think the way that this creeps in on people is like, well, it's not fair. You see this with kids, and my kids are amazing, but this is the thing that I will get on them about is I will tell them to do something, and they'll be like, well, no, that was supposed to be, insert other kid's name here. It's not fair. Why should I have to do this? Well, because you see it, you're here. Why aren't you going to take action on it? And people do this all the time. Well, that's not really fair. This person, they got it easy. This happened for them, and it happened that way. And now you're saying that I have to go twice as hard and twice as long to get the same exact thing. That's not fair. Okay. Like, how's that working out for you? Probably not great.
I've had many stories of responsibility in my life from a very young age. And there was a point in my life around like 8th or 9th grade where I kind of realized like, oh, like I actually am different. Mm-hmm. And however that was true, it was what I believed about my situation. Right? I remember in almost every grade having friends, and they would do stuff in school, and I would do it. And I went to Christian school through elementary school and middle school, and I would do it, and like other kids would do it, and then I would do it, and I would get in trouble.
Yeah.
It's like, why was the teacher looking at me and saying they can do that, but you can't?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because a lot of people look at their lives and be like, well, these people got to do it. Right. These people got to do it.
Exactly.
Whether it was my filter or whether it was the truth. What I took away from that is that my teachers were calling out in me that you need to hold yourself to a higher standard than those people. And I believe that was the case. I believe they saw something in me and said, you know what, those guys can do that stuff, but you can't. Right? And that's a leader saying, you know what, you're right. Like people think like, oh man, being the boss is so great. You know what it means when you're the leader? You give up lots of privileges,
For sure.
all the things that you wanted to do, things that are okay, things that are not a sin, right? They become a sin for you as a leader because you're leading other people. And the things that wouldn't necessarily hurt you may hurt others if you do them, right? To be a leader is to give up privileges. Literally, Jesus gave up his own will. Like he said to his Father, like, if this cup can pass from me, let it pass. But not my will, but yours be done.
Yeah.
Right? Jesus gave up his own privileges of what he could do, what he was capable of, what he wanted to do because of the leadership role that God had given him. No, son, I've not sent you here for yourself. I've sent you here for all of humanity, and you need to do what's required of you. God has given all of us responsibilities. God has given all of us abilities and resources. And what are you going to do with them? Right? When it comes to taking responsibility, when you do well with the things that are given to you, it's the parable of the talents. If you listen to this podcast, by the way, and you haven't read the parable of the talents, fix it, right? Honestly, I don't know what else to say because we talk about it all the time. You need to understand it so at least when we talk about it, that you've read it before and you know what I'm talking about. In the parable of the talents, that's the case, right? If you do well with what's given to you, more will be given to you. Yeah. If you're not a good steward, if you're not responsible with what's given to you, it will be taken away from you. This is what it means to be a man. God has given you things, but the test is, what will you do with what you've been given, right? And if you'll do well, if you'll take responsibility of every area in your life, you know what areas I have responsibility for? Wherever I'm at, whatever room I'm in. That doesn't mean I walk into every room and say, I'm the captain now.
No, for
right?
sure.
Whatever room I'm in, I have a responsibility to act a certain way, to think a certain way, to raise the standard in every room I'm in, to challenge people to be greater in whatever sense I can, to have a positive attitude. These are things that I can offer wherever I go, whether I'm the boss or not, right? That's what taking responsibility is. But weak men deny it. Weak men say, here's what I need to do when it's all about you.
Yeah, 100%, man. And that goes back to our child support stat at the beginning of the podcast. All right, man, what's number 3?
Number 3, this one might sting for a few men. Third way to be a weak man is to be impotent. What does that mean? What is impotent, right? And I'm not talking just about like you can't get a woman pregnant, right? What it means to be impotent is to be powerless, to be unable to take effective action. So we went from, the number one way to be weak is to be passive, right? To just sit back. Second way is to deny responsibility, not just to sit back, but to miss opportunities, right? And so these build on top of each other. The third way to weak is to be impotent. Maybe you've been passive and you've overcome that. Maybe you've denied responsibility and now you aren't. Like you're stepping up and you're taking hold of that opportunity, but you can't make anything happen. You're unable to make effective action. And where does that come from? Why are some men impotent? Why are some men paralyzed? Right? You have not trained.
Yeah.
You have not prepared for the opportunities that are in front of you. A lot of men show up in their lives as impotent because they're like, that the only reason that they show up is because they feel like they should. They feel like someone's going to make me be here. If it's out of your heart, if it's something that you want to do, you will show up trained, you will show up ready, you will show up capable for the day. Right? All of my life, I've been preparing. I don't necessarily know what I'm preparing for, but I know that I'll be ready when it shows up.
Yeah, for sure. And the thought process for this, the reason and logic is like, well, no one told me, or I don't know how. Like, that is the thing. Well, I don't know how. And actually, if I tried to do this, I might just be more of a burden than a help. So I'm just going to not do anything at all. Or I didn't know I was supposed to do that. No one told me. Guys, literally with the advent of the internet, which was quite some time ago, that excuse is literally never applicable. You can teach yourself anything. If you don't know how, it's like I said earlier, if you listen to Garrett talk, and I talk about him being aggressive, and you're like, well, that's easy. He's a SEAL, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So he went through really, really hard training. You could probably go through less hard training and still learn a lot of great skills that would make you more prepared than you are right now. You could watch videos on the internet. There's so many options for you to be prepared. There's no excuse now.
When people say that to me, it's like, there's just one of the thoughts in my head. You know, I heard the same things that they did. Right, like what I mean is like Edmund Burke's quote that JFK used many times: "When evil prevails, when good men choose to do nothing." Right? I said, well, I'm not evil; I'm a good man, and so I can't choose to do nothing. Right? If you choose to do nothing, what does it say about you? Right? I didn't want to be that type of man, and I'm not saying everyone's called to be a Navy SEAL. It's certainly not what I'm saying. But all of us are called to do something. All of us are called to a purpose that's greater than ourselves. And when you deny that responsibility, you'll be a weak man. But you've got to show up for that responsibility, and you've got to show up prepared and trained. And why would you do that, right? The reason that I went through SEAL training, the reason that I did what I did, the reason that I'm doing what I'm doing today, it's not for me, right? If you wanted glory in your life, there's easier ways than going through the SEAL teams.
For sure, yeah.
Right? There's easy paths to quote unquote like the world's glory. I'm not after that. What I want to be found faithful. And I don't want to be someone who like, I got the opportunity. I should have saved someone. I should have been there in the moment, and other people failed because of me. Other people were hurt because of me. Other people died because of me. That would be a weight that I never want to bear. Right. So what I'm going to do is make sure that I never show up to the opportunity. Pastor Keith says you have to seize the opportunity of a lifetime within the lifetime of the opportunity.
Yeah.
I don't want to be someone who the opportunity of the lifetime shows up and I'm not ready to seize it. I don't have the strength or the power to chase it down.
Yeah. And when Garrett talks about being prepared, now that you're preparing for something, but you don't know what, that's why we do hard things regularly. That's why we're so big on ice baths. That's why we're running 100 miler. That's why we do a lot of different things, because you don't know. I mean, I think about Pastor Keith, who had a heart attack that really, he should have died. He had a 100% blockage, but he was preparing his entire life. How? Well, he was just always lifting weights and being healthy. Well, he didn't know what he was preparing for, but it's the reason why he had a massive heart attack, and he's still charging ahead as like growing in fruit and producing more than ever as he's now 63. I look at that and I admire that so much. Yeah. So what are we preparing for? I don't know, but when it comes, I'm not going to be found wanting.
Well, for one, he went from, had that heart attack, 100% blockage, and then went from the ICU just to going home. That's not, the doctor said he'd never seen that before ever in his life, that people go from the ICU. Normally they go to regular care for days of monitoring. Went from ICU, cleared the blockage. Well, you seem so strong and healthy. I guess we'll just let you go home.
Yeah.
Right. But not only that, he made changes.
Yes.
Right. Because he said the way that he talks about that is like, man, this was, I guess this was a blind spot for me, because I thought I was very strong and very healthy, and there were things that I wasn't doing right. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make changes.
Yeah, that's good. All right, G, what is the last way for people to be weak?
So you can be passive, you can deny responsibility, you can be impotent, right? So, but let's say you get all those things right. I am not passive. I'm aggressive. I'm going to take hold. I'm going to be fearless in life. I'm not going to deny responsibility. I'm going to look for opportunities to serve others. I'm going to look for opportunities to grow. And I have power. I have strength, right? And so I can do well in those opportunities. But here's how you can still be weak with those things, right? The fourth way to be weak is to consume every day. That you would take that power that God's given you. You would take this power that you have and use it for yourself.
Yeah.
right? The opposite of consuming every day is to create every day.
Mm-hmm.
Like God made us to be creators. God made us to multiply. To consume is to use things for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Most people are familiar with the term of, consumers and creators in the context of think like YouTube. You got YouTube creators, and most of us are just YouTube consumers, right? We just watch the stuff on there. Some people are creating on there. What I want you to think about is within every area of your life. Are you consuming? Are you creating? Think about your health today. Did you consume some of your health? Like we could take your health and convert it into a bank account. Like you have a dollar amount of health. Some of us got, $5 worth of health. Some of us have $500 million worth of health, right? Did you consume health today, or did you create health? Did your number go up, or did your number go down? In every area of your life, you can be growing, or you can be getting weaker. You can be consuming. And so what weak men do is they consume every day. Like maybe you have you take action, you have power, but at the end of the day, you turn around and consume and you undo everything that you did.
Yeah.
It's not about do you watch videos on YouTube, right? It's not about do you consume food. That's not what I'm saying. There is a type of person who is a consumer, and there's a type of person who's a creator. At the end of your day, did you net grow, or did you net get weaker?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's a couple things that will come in here. I mean, one, an entitlement thought process will be in there like, well, hey, I've earned this. I deserve this. I worked hard for this. That's how that's going to make you a consumer. The other one is, and this one I think is more deceptive, is the if-then. Well, if I just get this, this, and this, then I'll be able to do this for other people. And so you're always trying to get something external so that then you can do what you know you should be doing. No. You just start doing the things that with what you have right now. Because that if-then thing, it'll just keep moving. You'll just keep needing to consume more and more and more. And that's how it sneaks into you, man. It can come in with seeming like it's a good thought. Like, well, if I have this, then I'll be able to do that, right? That's logical. No, start with what you got.
There's a thought that I've had around consuming every day, or just a thought that I've had around being a consumer versus a creator that stayed with me for a long time. This is something I really learned from the military and learned through some of my reflection back on my life. And that's that the lower your needs are in life, the stronger you are. And so let me give you an example of that. Right, like I enjoy a nice weekend at the Ritz with my wife, and I more than enjoy it. I love it, right? But at the same time, like Nick has seen it. You can put me in in the lowest of circumstances. I can live out of a backpack and eat freeze-dried meals and sleep out in the cold, and I'm not surviving. I'm thriving.
Yes.
Because I don't need very much.
Yeah.
Right? I need a place to lay my head. I need some sustenance, and I need some water.
Yeah.
Right? That's all that I need. And I'm comfortable with that. And you give me those things, and I'm thriving on the other side of that, right? Other people have raised their needs to well, I need this, and I need this, and I need to feel comfortable, and I need my time to myself, and I need that. No. Give me a little bit of food. Give me a little bit of water. Give me a little bit of sleep. And after that, I'm thriving, regardless of the circumstances. Work me all day. I'm still thriving. Right? What's your actual needs level in your life? What are all the things that you need to where you say, well, now I can help others, right? If I'm not starving to death, if I haven't been awake for days, if I'm not dehydrated to the point of exhaustion, I'm at the point where I'm now helping other people. And so the lower your need, this is part of what being strong is. People who are consumers, the more you consume, the more you get to it's well, I also need this every day.
Exactly,
and I also need this every day. And I need my shot, and I need my medicines, and I need my food, and I need my time to myself, and I need people to speak to this way, and I need people to use my pronouns. Whatever it is that you want to make the things that you need to make you feel better, to make you to where it's okay, now that everyone's fulfilled my needs, now I can do things for other people. All I need is the bare minimum in my life, and now I'm ready to serve others, right? And so the lower your needs are, the stronger you are. And one of the ways that'll lower your baseline for what your needs are is you spend some time there. The reason my needs for getting into the thrive category are very low is because I've spent a lot of time in places where it's very difficult to survive. And so the more you do that, and so how do you do that? Well, one, just stop consuming. Why don't you got a problem with food? Why don't you just not eat for 3 days and realize man, I didn't die, right? I was uncomfortable, but I was still okay, right? I didn't die. That'll reset your baseline for how you feel about food. There's a lot of opportunities you have in your life to lower your baseline for needs. And why would you want to do that? Well, the only reason that you would want to do that is because your life's not about you, and you want to be as strong as you can to help as many people as you can, to do as much as you can.
Yeah. I'm so glad you brought that up, man. I remember the first time I heard you say that was at a camping trip with our men's group for church, and you said that you're I don't want to be the kind of person that needs a lot to be thriving. And he said, yes, I enjoy going to the Ritz, but I'm just as happy in a tent. Like it's not like you put me in a tent and I start complaining.
I like doing those things, but I don't need them.
Exactly.
And I'm not like hating, like this is just an example I use. If you have one of these, don't be offended or bothered by it. Right. But there were guys on our camping trip that use a CPAP. Right. And there's, you know what, there's also like if I needed a CPAP, I'd feel the same way about that I felt about my lower back issue. Right. Whatever I got to do to not have this, because that's what it means to me. I'm not judging people who have those, but I also didn't like you know what that means? That I need electricity all the time.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Like there's all these things in my life that I can't do. And I don't want to be limited in that way. Mm-hmm. I want to do as much as I possibly can. And you know what? God gives us different things. I'm just taking the things that God gave me and I said, I'm going to make the most out of them. I'm not going to let other people set my standards. I'm going to set my standards for growth. And so that's just a small example of how I look at things. And I say, like, I don't want to have high needs. Yeah. I want to have a lot of strength so that I can serve more people, that every area in life to me is open. If I want to go there and help somebody, I'm not saying, oh, well, I would need this to be able to do that.
Yeah, I love that so much. All right, we're going to wrap up there. An interesting thought. For a lot of the episodes that we've done, The Impossible Life, we have given you challenges. And your challenge for this episode is the same as it's going to be for every episode going forward. Just listen and do what we say. Do what you've heard. Apply it to your life. Like if you want to talk about weakness, nothing is weaker than hearing something really great and then needing somebody to, present it to you in a certain way before you'll actually take action on it. Your life's going to change when you change. Nothing will work unless you do. So if you want to get better, truthfully, take what you've heard, do your own research, apply it to your life. Your life will grow exponentially. And so that's all we're going to say for this.
Nick, it's funny that you say that. Because
okay, you couldn't leave it, could you?
When we first started this podcast, Nick said, hey, we need to give people a challenge. And I said, what do you mean? We just talked for 45 minutes about what they should do. That's the challenge. The challenge is do what we told you. Implement what we've given you. So I just think it's funny that you've come around.
Yeah, and you couldn't just leave that one off the podcast. But truthfully, go do it.